Most companies celebrate when they break a record once. These three brands have turned it into a habit. Every few years, they launch another car, set another benchmark, and somehow convince the world that they've done the impossible again. What's even stranger is that they aren't chasing the same goal. One is obsessed with craftsmanship, another lives for racing, and the third refuses to accept limits. Yet somehow, all three keep rewriting automotive history. So what's the secret? Why do Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, and Bugatti keep raising the bar while everyone else is trying to catch up? Let's find out. The funny thing is, when people hear the word record, they immediately think about speed, fastest, quickest, most powerful. But that's only one kind of record. Some records have nothing to do with a stopwatch. And no company understands that better than Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce walk into a Rolls-Royce showroom, and you'll notice something unusual almost immediately. Nobody is trying to sell you a car. Instead, they're asking questions. What colors remind you of home? What kind of wood do you prefer? Would you like the stitching to match your favorite watch? It almost feels like you're commissioning a luxury yacht instead of ordering a car. That's because Rolls-Royce isn't competing with ordinary luxury brands. It's competing with the world's greatest craftsmen. And that's exactly why it keeps breaking records. Take cars like the La Rose Noire Droptail. The headlines focused on the price because that's what grabs attention. But the real story was hidden in the details. Thousands of handcrafted wood veneer pieces arranged like artwork. Months spent perfecting tiny interior elements that most people would never even notice. Customers working directly with designers to create something nobody else on Earth would ever own. That's not mass production, that's rolling architecture. And every time Rolls-Royce creates one of these coach-built masterpieces, it quietly raises the ceiling for what's possible in automotive luxury, which is why collectors keep coming back. Because once you've experienced something built specifically for you, it's very hard to go back to choosing from a catalog. Now compare that philosophy to Ferrari. Everything changes. Ferrari doesn't just build cars, it builds anticipation. Think about how many times you've seen people talking about a new Ferrari months before it's officially revealed. Rumors, spy photos, pot predictions. Everyone wants to know what's coming next. Ferrari understands something very few companies truly master. The experience starts long before the engine ever starts. Then comes the launch, the waiting lists, the limited production, the carefully selected buyers. Suddenly, owning the car becomes about much more than driving it. It becomes joining a story that's been growing for decades. That's one reason Ferrari keeps breaking records. Not just on racetracks, but at auctions. Some Ferrari models have sold for astonishing prices years after leaving the factory. Why? Because collectors aren't buying sheet metal. They're buying racing heritage. They're buying victories. They're buying one of the most recognizable names in automotive history. Every flagship Ferrari becomes another chapter in that legacy. And here's what makes it even smarter. Ferrari never tries to build enough cars for everyone. In fact, it often does the opposite. Demand almost always stays ahead of supply. That creates something every luxury brand dreams about. Desire. When people know they might not get something, they want it even more. That's psychology, not marketing. And Ferrari has been mastering that formula for generations. By the time a new flagship reaches its first owners, it has already become one of the most talked about cars in the world. Which brings us to the final brand. The company that doesn't just break records, it seems determined to redefine them altogether. And then there's Bugatti. If Rolls-Royce is obsessed with craftsmanship and Ferrari lives for heritage, Bugatti has built its reputation on one simple question. What if we push the impossible just a little further? That's been the company's mindset for years. Every time people think they've reached the limit of what a road car can do, Bugatti somehow finds another way to surprise everyone. But here's the interesting part. The company isn't trying to build the fastest car, just so it can hang another trophy on the wall. Breaking records is almost a byproduct of something much bigger. Bugatti wants to prove what's possible when engineers aren't told to think small. Take the Chiron, for example. Most manufacturers would have been proud just to build a car with that level of performance. Bugatti kept asking, what happens if we go even further? That relentless mindset is exactly why the brand has become almost mythical among collectors. People aren't simply buying incredible performance. They're buying a machine that represents the absolute edge of automotive engineering. And that's something very few companies can honestly claim. Then came the Tourbillon. Replacing the Chiron sounded almost impossible. After all, how do you follow a car that had already rewritten so many records? Most companies would have played it safe. Bugatti did the opposite. Instead of making small improvements, it introduced an entirely new philosophy, a naturally aspirated V16 hybrid technology, an interior inspired by mechanical watchmaking rather than oversized digital screens. It wasn't just about building another hypercar. It was about proving that innovation doesn't always mean abandoning tradition. Collectors immediately understood what Bugatti was trying to do. The tourbillon wasn't replacing history. It was creating the next chapter of it. And that's why demand exploded before many people had even seen one in person. But here's something all three of these brands have figured out. They're not really competing against each other. Think about it. Nobody walks into a Rolls-Royce showroom trying to decide between a Phantom and a Ferrari. Nobody compares a Ferrari to a Bugatti the way they compare two ordinary sports cars. Each company has created its own world. Rolls-Royce sells craftsmanship, Ferrari sells passion. Bugatti sells engineering without compromise. That's why all three keep breaking records without constantly stealing customers from one another. They're solving completely different dreams. One customer wants the quietest, most luxurious drive imaginable. Another wants a car with racing DNA flowing through every bolt. Someone else wants to own one of the most advanced machines ever built. Three different dreams, three different answers. And that's exactly what makes these companies so difficult to copy. Other manufacturers can build faster cars. They can build more luxurious interiors. They can even build more powerful engines. But copying decades of reputation, that's almost impossible. Trust like that isn't created in a few years. It's built generation after generation, record after record, customer after customer. Maybe that's why these brands continue leading while everyone else keeps trying to catch up. Because they've stopped chasing trends. Instead, they've focused on becoming the very best at one thing. Rolls-Royce doesn't try to become Ferrari. Ferrari doesn't try to become Bugatti. And Bugatti certainly doesn't try to become anyone else. They know exactly who they are. Ironically, that's probably the biggest reason they keep setting new benchmarks. Not because they're trying to beat everyone else, but because they're constantly trying to beat themselves. And maybe that's the lesson hidden behind all these record-breaking cars. The companies that leave the biggest mark on history aren't the ones chasing every opportunity. They're the ones brave enough to perfect their own identity and keep raising their own standards year after year. That's why Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, and Bugatti aren't just building extraordinary cars. They're building legacies. And legacies have a funny habit of outlasting every record ever set. If you enjoyed this deep dive into three of the world's most iconic automotive brands, make sure you subscribe. There are countless stories behind the cars, the people who built them, and the records that changed the industry forever. In the next video, we'll uncover another fascinating chapter from the world of luxury and performance automobiles that you definitely won't want to miss.